Have you ever noticed that the more you call your Shih Tzu, the less he seems to listen? Many owners experience this every day. They repeat commands, raise their voices, get irritated, and nothing changes. It's as if the Shih Tzu simply doesn't understand what you want. But is he just naturally disobedient? The answer is no. What happens is that, most of the time, the owner is using the wrong way to communicate, and the more they yell, the less effective they are. The secret to obedience isn't in force or yelling, but in something much simpler: clear communication and positive reinforcement. And the best part is that this can yield immediate results, even in Shih Tzus considered stubborn. In this video, I'll show you exactly what to do to get your Shih Tzu to finally listen to you, without suffering or stress. So subscribe to the channel, activate the bell, and leave a like so you don't miss any tips that can transform the relationship between you and your best friend. Have you ever noticed that when a Shih Tzu doesn't obey, most people's first reaction is scream? Many owners believe that by raising their voice, their Shih Tzu will understand that it needs to obey. But the exact opposite happens. Shih Tzus don't understand words the way we do. To them, a shout doesn't mean pay attention, but rather a signal of stress or threat. And what does they do? They either become even more agitated, barking or running, or they simply ignore it and walk away. This is the big mistake that leads so many owners to believe their Shih Tzus are disobedient. They repeat the command over and over, lose their temper, raise their voices, and in the end, the relationship with the Shih Tzu becomes fraught with frustration. The truth is, to the animal, all of this sounds like meaningless noise. Imagine someone speaking to you in a language you don't understand. No matter how loudly they speak, you'll never understand. It's exactly like that with Shih Tzus. The secret is not to speak louder, but to speak more clearly and coherently. Shih Tzus learn by association. This means they connect the sound of the word, the owner's gesture, and the reward that follows. If you say, sit calmly, always in the same way, and reward the Shih Tzu when he does the right movement, he'll learn quickly. But if you constantly change your tone, gesture, or way of asking, the Shih Tzu will become confused. Another common mistake is to scold someone late. Many owners wait minutes after a mess to get their Shih Tzu's attention. However, the Shih Tzu doesn't associate the past mistake with the current scolding. To them, it's as if you were angry for no reason. The result? More confusion, more disobedience, and less trust. Therefore, the big mistake is not the Shih Tzu being stubborn, but the owner believing that shout and repeat is the solution. Now that you know this, the next step is to discover how your Shih Tzu's mind really works. And that's what we'll reveal next. Many people believe that Shih Tzus are disobedient because they don't understand anything, or they throw tantrums on purpose. But the truth is that Shih Tzus have a different way of seeing the world and processing information. They don't think like us, they don't interpret long sentences, and they can't connect past situations to future scoldings. A Shih Tzu's brain works in a much simpler and more practical way. It learns by doing, direct association. This means that, for the Shih Tzu, every command, gesture, or tone of voice needs to be linked to an immediate consequence. If they do something right and earn a reward, like a treat, a pat, or even praise, their brain registers. This behavior is worth repeating. On the other hand, if there's no consequence, they see no reason to repeat it. That's why many owners feel like they're talking to a wall. The Shih Tzu isn't being stubborn, they just don't make sense of what they're hearing. Another important point is that Shih Tzus are masters in reading emotions. They may not understand the phrase, "you made me nervous," but they can tell by the tone of voice, body posture, and even the smell of sweat when their owner is stressed or calm. This completely influences the Shih Tzu's response. If the owner asks for something in a confused, nervous, or incoherent way, the Shih Tzu won't know how to act. Now, when the command is given calmly, clearly, and consistently, the Shih Tzu feels secure and understands that it can trust that command. That's why consistency is key in training. Imagine saying sit today, sit here tomorrow, and then switching to sit right now. It may sound the same to you, but to the Shih Tzu, they're different sounds that don't make sense. This lack of consistency is what creates confusion and the impression that the Shih Tzu is disobedient. Understanding your Shih Tzu's mind is the first step to transforming your relationship. When you realize he's not rebellious by choice, but simply waiting for clear communication, everything changes. And that's where the next secret comes in: how to create simple, straightforward commands that actually work. Now that you know that Shih Tzus learn by association, it's easier to understand why clear and simple communication is the heart of obedience. Imagine you're trying to teach a small child to recognize colors. If today you point to red and say red, Tomorrow you point and say scarlet and then say crimson. The child will be confused. The same thing happens with Shih Tzus. They need short, consistent words that are always repeated in the same way. So, choose easy commands. Sit, stay, come, no. Avoid long phrases like, sit here now, please, because to the Shih Tzu, this becomes just a meaningless string of sounds. A single command, delivered calmly and firmly, is much more powerful than 1,000 words spoken in an irritated tone. Another essential point is to use gestures along with the word. For example, when teaching sit, you can slightly raise your hand with the treat while saying the word. The Shih Tzu will associate the gesture with the sitting movement, and, over time, will obey simply by hearing the command. This combination of sound and gesture creates clarity. It is also important to maintain the same tone of voice. There's no point in saying come one time affectionately and the next angrily. To the Shih Tzu, the command needs to always sound the same. If the owner changes the tone every time, the Shih Tzu won't understand whether it's an order, a scolding, or a game. And here's a practical tip. Avoid repeating the command multiple times in a row. Saying, sit, 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 only teaches the Shih Tzu to wait 3 repetitions before reacting. The correct way to do this is to say it once, wait, and if the Shih Tzu doesn't respond, show the gesture again or gently guide it to the desired position. When it gets it right, reward it immediately. This clarity transforms the way your Shih Tzu responds. Soon he begins to obey, effortlessly because he understands exactly what you want. Communication stops being a shouting match and becomes a simple, clear, and efficient exchange. And in the next step, we'll reveal what really makes the Shih Tzu repeat the right behavior: the power of positive reinforcement. If there is a secret that really works to teach a Shih Tzu to obey, that secret is called positive reinforcement. Unlike scolding, which creates fear and confusion, positive reinforcement makes the Shih Tzu learn, happily associating the command with something good. And it's precisely this pleasant feeling that makes the Shih Tzu repeat the behavior over and over again. The principle is simple. Whenever your Shih Tzu does what you ask, he should receive an immediate reward. It could be a tasty treat, a pat, praise in a lively voice, or even his favorite toy. The important thing is that the reward is something the Shih Tzu truly values. This way, his brain records the message. When I do this, good things happen. For example, when teaching the sit command, you show the gesture, say the command, and as soon as the Shih Tzu sits, you give the treat. This quick connection between action and reward is crucial. If you take too long, the Shih Tzu won't understand the reason for the reward. But be careful. Positive reinforcement doesn't mean giving treats all the time for no reason. It means giving them at the right time, only when the desired behavior happens. This detail prevents the Shih Tzu from becoming spoiled or expecting rewards all the time without obeying. Another powerful tip is to vary the rewards. If you only use treats, your Shih Tzu may lose interest or even gain weight. Alternate with praise, toys, and affection. Many Shih Tzus, for example, are happier with a rubber ball than with any biscuit. Figuring out what motivates your Shih Tzu is part of the process. Additionally, positive reinforcement should be used in small victories. If your Shih Tzu doesn't know anything yet, celebrate and reward each successful step. This encourages him to try again and advance to the next level. This method turns training into a fun and enjoyable experience for both Shih Tzu and owner. Shih Tzus don't obey out of fear, but because they want to please and know something good will come their way. This is where obedience begins to take hold. And in the next topic, we will reveal why repetition is the key to transforming this technique into lasting results. If there is one word that sums up any Shih Tzu's learning, that word is repetition. The canine brain works like a tape recorder. The more times it hears and experiences the same situation, the stronger the connection between that command and the expected action becomes. That's why, after repeating it several times, the Shih Tzu begins to obey almost automatically. But here's the important thing. This repetition shouldn't be tiresome. Many owners believe they need to spend hours training their Shih Tzu until they memorize it, and that's a big mistake. Shih Tzus learn best in short and consistent sessions, 5 to 10 minutes at a time, performed daily. Just as we don't learn a new skill in a single day, Shih Tzus also need time to consolidate what they've been taught. Think of learning as building a road. Each repetition is a brick placed on the path. The more correct repetitions, the more solid and clear this road becomes in the Shih Tzu's mind. If you practice a command today and only practice it again in 2 weeks, the road weakens. But if you reinforce it every day, it becomes so strong that the Shih Tzu naturally obeys. Another essential point is the coherence in repetition. If today you reward him when he obeys quickly, but tomorrow you let it slide, the Shih Tzu won't understand whether it's worth repeating or not. Repetition only works when the owner is consistent, always using the same command, the same gesture, and the same reaction. And here's a practical tip. Never end a training session with a mistake. If your Shih Tzu isn't getting it right, go back to a simpler command. Let him complete it successfully, and only then finish. This ensures the last memory is positive and reinforces the learning. Repetition also helps Shih Tzus feel secure. When they realize the rules are clear and consistent, they gain trust in their owners and become more willing to obey. So repetition isn't just about teaching a command. It's about creating a solid habit, which makes obedience a natural part of the Shih Tzu's behavior. And in the next topic, we'll talk about something that goes hand in hand with repetition and can completely change the results: tone of voice and body language. Did you know that your Shih Tzu understands much more than what you show with your body and tone of voice than with the words you speak? This is because Shih Tzus are experts in read emotional signals. They observe your posture, your gestures, your facial expressions, and even the way you breathe. To them, all of this speaks much louder than words. Therefore, when you give a command in a nervous, impatient, or shouted tone of voice, the Shih Tzu doesn't interpret it as a clear instruction. He understands that you're irritated, and this can trigger two reactions. Either he becomes anxious and agitated, or he withdraws and avoids contact. Neither of these reactions leads to true obedience. The secret is to use a calm, firm, and constant tone, which conveys security. Likewise, your body language needs to be consistent. Imagine you tell your Shih Tzu to stay still, but at the same time, you make beckoning gestures or move around in a confused manner. To him, this is contradictory. The result? He doesn't know whether to stay or come to you. Now, if your body is aligned with what you say, upright posture, clear gestures, and a balanced tone of voice, the Shih Tzu understands the message without difficulty. Another valuable tip is to use positive expressions along with the command. A slight smile, a nod of approval, or even a relaxed posture helps the Shih Tzu feel like he's on the right track. After all, they are extremely sensitive to our emotional state. It's worth remembering that Shih Tzus also differentiate intonation. A cheerful, very good, is worth as much as a treat. A firm but unyielding no communicates disapproval without causing alarm. Ultimately, tone of voice and body language are like the translation your Shih Tzu uses to understand what you want. If you learn to control these signals, training becomes much more efficient, and communication with your Shih Tzu becomes clear and harmonious. And now that you know how to communicate effectively, in the next topic, we'll talk about one of the biggest mistakes owners make: the habit of correcting their Shih Tzu after the error has already occurred. This is, without a doubt, one of the most common mistakes made by tutors. Correct the Shih Tzu after the mistake has already passed. Imagine the scene. You come home and find the sofa destroyed, the trash can overturned, or that pee in the wrong place. Most people's immediate reaction is to call the Shih Tzu, point out what he did, and scold him. But you know what happens? To the Shih Tzu, nothing makes sense. This is because Shih Tzus live in the here, and now they don't have the same ability to reason about the past as we do. When you fight minutes or even hours after the mischief, the Shih Tzu doesn't associate the scolding with the mistake he made. To him, you're angry for no reason at all. That's why Shih Tzus often look guilty, not because they understand what they did, but because they sense from your expression and tone of voice that you're angry. They're simply demonstrating submission, trying to avoid conflict. The correction only works if it is done at the exact moment the behavior occurs. If your Shih Tzu is chewing your shoe, that's when you should intervene, redirecting him to a suitable toy. If he's about to climb on the couch, that's when you, should say no and show him where he can lie down. The connection needs to be immediate so that his brain associates the action with the consequence. Another common mistake is punishing your Shih Tzu without teaching him the correct alternative. Simply saying no isn't enough if you don't show him what to do instead. For example, if he peed in the wrong place, you need to take him to the toilet pad or newspaper, reinforcing him when he does it right. This way, he understands what's expected. This detail makes all the difference. Instead of learning through fear, the Shih Tzu learns through clear guidance. He doesn't have to guess, because you show him what's right at the right time. So remember, delayed scolding doesn't educate. It only breeds fear and distrust. True learning happens when correction is immediate and followed by a correct alternative. In the next topic, we'll talk about something that helps a lot in this process: how to create a distraction-free environment so your Shih Tzu learns faster and with less stress. Have you ever tried to teach your Shih Tzu a command, but realized he was more interested in sniffing the ground, looking at the street, or barking at any noise. This happens because Shih Tzus have an incredible ability to be distracted by surrounding stimuli. Every sound, smell, or movement is new to them. Therefore, when you try to train in a place full of stimuli, it's nearly impossible to get your Shih Tzu's full attention. The secret is in choose the right environment to begin learning. If you want your Shih Tzu to truly understand what you're teaching, always start in a calm, controlled space. This could be inside the house, in a quiet room, or even in a quiet corner of the yard. The important thing is that your Shih Tzu can focus on you without external distractions. Once the command is firmly established, you can increase the difficulty. Take the training to a more active environment, such as the living room, the backyard, or even the sidewalk in front of your house. This progression helps the Shih Tzu learn to obey even when there are different stimuli around. It's as if you're training levels of concentration, from easiest to most difficult. Another important detail is to prepare the environment positively. Remove objects that could be distracting, have treats on hand, and make the space comfortable. When the Shih Tzu associates training with a calm place, he feels more secure and learns much faster. It's also crucial to avoid distractions. Many owners make the mistake of training while checking their phones or talking to someone. Remember, if you're not 100% present, you can't expect your Shih Tzu to be. The focus needs to be mutual. Creating a distraction-free environment at first is like teaching a child to read in a quiet place. Only after they master the letters can they study with the TV on or in the midst of other people. It's exactly the same with a Shih Tzu. And in the next topic, we will reveal what really turns this learning into natural obedience: the connection and bond between you and your Shih Tzu. Many owners believe that a Shih Tzu's obedience depends solely on well-delivered commands and training techniques. But there's something even more powerful behind all of this: emotional bond between you and your Shih Tzu. The stronger this connection, the easier it will be for him to obey. And it's not magic. It's simply how Shih Tzus have been shaped by their interactions with humans. Shih Tzus live in packs. They need to trust the pack leader to feel safe. In the case of domestic Shih Tzus, that leader is you. If your owner conveys affection, trust, and clarity, the Shih Tzu naturally wants to cooperate. But if the relationship is based solely on scolding, yelling, or distancing, the Shih Tzu becomes withdrawn, loses the desire to obey, and often even develops unwanted behaviors such as anxiety, aggression, or apathy. Bonds are built through small, everyday gestures: taking calm walks, playing for a few minutes, offering affection, rewarding good behavior, and even talking to your Shih Tzu in a loving tone. These actions help your Shih Tzu associate your presence with something positive. So, when it's time for training, your Shih Tzu is already predisposed to listen to you, trusting that only positive experiences will come from it. Another essential point is respect. Never try to force your Shih Tzu to obey through violence or fear. These methods may generate an immediate response, but they destroy trust. And without trust, there is no bond. And without bonding, there is no true obedience. Think about how a child learns faster when they admire and trust their teacher. A Shih Tzu sees their owner the same way. If they feel you're someone they can trust, they'll obey you not out of obligation, but because they want to please. And here's the most beautiful detail. When there's a bond, obedience stops being a rigid training exercise and becomes a natural consequence of the relationship. The Shih Tzu starts paying attention to you even without commands, simply because they're connected to your behavior. In the next and final topic, we will close this reasoning by showing how all these secrets come together and revealing what, after all, is the "this" in the title that can transform the way your Shih Tzu obeys you. It's time to reveal what's behind that "this" in the title, and perhaps you've already realized it throughout the video. The secret isn't a miracle trick, a louder shout, or a special collar. The real secret to getting your Shih Tzu to obey lies in 3 pillars that work together: clear communication, positive reinforcement, and trusting bonds. When you understand that your Shih Tzu isn't being stubborn out of malice, but because he doesn't fully understand what you want, everything changes. From that moment on, you stop yelling and start communicating simply, using short commands, consistent gestures, and a firm but calm tone of voice. This creates clarity in the Shih Tzu's mind. Then, positive reinforcement kicks in to show them that obedience is worthwhile. Every time they get it right and receive a treat, a pat, or even some warm praise, they associate that behavior with something pleasurable. Over time, this process repeats itself so often that obedience stops being an obligation and becomes something natural. And finally, bonding is the invisible link that holds it all together. A Shih Tzu that trusts its owner, that feels loved and respected, will want to listen, follow, and please. It obeys not because it's afraid, but because there's a connection. It's as if its heart is saying, I trust you, and that's why I'll follow you. So, if until now you believed you had to shout to be heard, know that change can start right now. Try applying these pillars to your daily life, even if only for a few minutes, and you'll be surprised at how quickly you see results. And before I close, I want to invite you to take the next step with me. If you liked this video, subscribe to the channel, activate the bell, and leave your like. This not only helps me bring you more content like this, but also ensures you'll always receive practical tips to transform your Shih Tzu's life. And take the opportunity to comment below. What's the biggest obedience challenge you face with your Shih Tzu? I'd love to hear it, and who knows, maybe I'll bring you a special video just to answer your question. See you in the next video. Bye!